Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first of what will be many SEN workshops, we hope, in the future. So this workshop is organized by SEN. I'm Hiral Naik, the chair of SEN, if you don't know me already. We have maybe one or two of our steering committee members joining us today as well. But we wanted to host this workshop for you so that you have a way of being able to share your work, whatever you do on the ground, in the form of an article. And we have been very fortunate today to be able to have MSF facilitating this meeting. So the experts from MSF will be able to share their experiences. They will be able to provide guidance. And of course, one of the things we'd like to do with the articles is share it on International Snakebite Awareness Day on the 19th of September, as well as a website that we are developing for the SEN network. So thank you very, very much to everybody who has joined today. And for those of you that could not join, I hope this will be useful in creating your own articles. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to the MSF team. They will introduce themselves. And just very quickly, the way that the workshop will run today is we will have a theory section, and then we will have an opportunity to go into various breakout rooms. You will be paired with somebody, and you will have an opportunity to actually develop an article. So thank you very much for joining. I'm handing over to the MSF team.
Hi there, everybody. My name's Amber. I work in the communications team at MSF UK in the London office. I apologise that obviously my camera is not working today, which is a classic problem, but never mind. I'm going to be showing you some slides in a bit. So you won't even need to see my face, but trust me, it's very glamorous and beautiful all the time. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself now, or do you want to do it later?
Yes. I know, yeah. My name's Laura McCullough, and I work in the MSF Access Campaigns communication team. I am actually also currently based in London, though I have been based elsewhere. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to engaging with you as a group.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to start us off. I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, that should just be coming through now. Okay, welcome everybody. It's so good to have you all. I'm really excited to be able to speak to you today. Part of my job at MSF is all about telling complex, often biomedical stories in an engaging and accessible way. So it's something I'm really passionate about. We're going to be just a quick run through of what I'm going to be talking to you about today. First up, why even bother? You guys are all accomplished technical writers, so why would we bother talking about this other style of writing? Next up, we'll look at some potential structures of how you construct your writing. We'll think about style, and we'll also talk about beginnings and endings, just because those can sometimes be the hardest bit. Okay. So many of you will have been at school or university where you will have learned traditional science writing. Traditional science writing is all about technical language that's very specific to your sector. It's all about this passive voice. So we would never say I or we would say the study. And it has this sort of impersonal, impassive, objective tone, which is really key to the identity of sort of strong science and technical writing. This is all extremely effective for communicating within your expert groups with, two people who understand this technical world. But for anyone outside of that world, it is fantastically boring. And in today's sort of attention economy, where you're competing all the time for people's attention, boring is one of the things that you cannot afford to be. So let's talk a bit about how you can discuss your work in a different way. One of the things I'm really passionate about is this idea of storytelling. I think we all can relate to what it feels like to be told a good story. Maybe it's a friend after work over a drink is telling you a fantastic story about something that happened to them. Maybe it's a favorite TV show or a brilliant TED talk you watched. But there's that sense of being keen to follow a narrative and having this sort of satisfying feeling at the end. And there's actually been quite a lot of quite interesting research around sort of communications and the neuroscience of it. And two of the things that I think are really interesting about storytelling and about communications generally is that a well-told story will trigger parts of the brain, the process called mirroring, so that instead of just being lodged as a sort of fact, people will think about times when they've been warm, times that they've been happy. You'll be sort of triggering an empathetic response, which leads to more accurate and longer recall of the fact. Good storytelling also triggers the brain's dopamine response, so it's a reward center. So there's some really interesting research which sort of suggests that storytelling, rather than just presenting facts, can have real advantages. And just as an example of this, within MSF, they've actually been harnessing this as part of a project to spread health promotion messages. So simple messages about, this example was about a tropical disease called Noma. They had tried just sharing the fact about Noma, and then they did a project where they worked these facts into a story in conjunction with the community, a story about a patient, and they found that this spread much more quickly among the community than just facts alone. So I really like that example that sort of tells us that sort of human beings are hungry for stories, and that they can really help us transmit important ideas. So just a note about the attention economy. We are always competing with lots of other things, so we need to be engaging. And sometimes people, I don't know, sometimes you get some pushback about communications from people in technical settings who say, well, my writing is, my work is important and it's complex, and I need to write about it in a complex way to reach a complex and important audience. And my answer to that is, even Bill Gates brushes his teeth. Even Bill Gates has a few moments of the day when he is scrolling on his phone, where he doesn't have the time or the mental capacity, the energy to read a big, 2,000-page report. But he could just have a few moments just to read something that's a bit lighter, a bit more engaging. Your audiences are everywhere, and the internet gives us a fantastic opportunity to reach new people, whether they're waiting for the bus, whether they're on their lunch break. And so the sorts of storytelling we're going to ask you to be doing is really designed to meet those people. But I just want to encourage you not to dismiss them as a frivolous audience. They can still be a really important audience to your work, even if you're communicating with them in this more accessible way. Okay, so let's jump in. We're going to leave behind everything we know about good science writing, leaving behind this idea of the abstract, the methodology. You've got to make it reproducible, and we're going to jump in to how you might start to structure a less formal, more personal, conversational piece of writing. Before we start on this, I'm just going to say you don't have to follow one of these structures at all. We thought we'd give you some ideas because lots of people are used to writing in a very sort of structured way when they do science writing. You know, there is this sort of format that everyone follows. If you've got other ideas, absolutely, you can follow your heart. If you feel confident as a writer, you don't have to choose one of these. But if you're looking for some ideas of how you could start to put a story together, here are some of my faves. First one is this idea of problem, solution, urgency. And it really does what it says on the tin. I've given a little example here, which I will read out. So first section. In the village, I meet Amir. Amir is one of the roughly 5,000 people a year in this region who are left disabled after a snake bite. He walks slowly with the aid of a stick and says his mobility problems make it hard to find work in this agricultural community. So in the first section of your article, if you're using this format, you'll be outlining the problem, but you'll be trying to do it on really personal terms. We're trying to create, we're trying to get the reader's interest, but we're also trying to frame this as a really human problem. In the second section, Amir now has a new role as part of a local initiative which travels to schools and community groups to educate people about snakebite. If I'd had this information, I might have avoided getting bitten, says Amir. Now I'm determined to help others. So very simple. You're then outlining the solution that you've perhaps found in your research. But the final section is really important because we're not stopping there. The final section is about thinking about what more needs to be done. What will this problem look like in the future? How can it be addressed? We're giving some urgency. And this is where you can also start working towards your call to action, which we'll be talking about a bit later. So in this example, we said the scheme is having an impact locally, but the small team desperately needs more funding to reach neighbouring provinces. With many funders failing to consider snakebite a serious health issue, the future for Amir and people like him remains uncertain. Also, I need to just let you know, I am not a snakebite expert, so whilst I have written some examples, I apologise for any factual inaccuracies on the topic of snakebite on here. I was just trying to make the examples feel relevant. Okay, so problem, solution, urgency, a great format, a great structure to use for your story. Another one I really like is the story sandwich. In this example, you'll be taking a eye-catching, a sort of attention-grabbing image, a human interest story, something that is going to be very engaging for the reader. But if you know that you also need to convey a lot of factual information, a lot of stats, what I encourage you to do is to split your human interest story in half and both start with it and finish with it. So if you've been doing some field work and there's a particular person you've met, you could start with a bit of their story at the beginning and then finish with it at the end. And in the middle, you could talk about all that important stuff. So here is an example. And I wrote this just to show how you could also use your personal story in this way. So in this example, we said, I remember the first time I saw a snake. It was sitting in the sun in my childhood garden in Malawi, its tongue flickering. I wanted to touch it, but my mother spotted me and swept me inside. I remember her panic, trying to stay calm as she gripped my shoulders and told me I should never, ever go near a creature like that. That could be the opening. And you can see in this example, it's very personal. There's lots of sensory detail to sort of trigger all those different parts of the brain. Then you could pop in all your facts about the snakebite engagement network. And then right at the end, to give this satisfying feeling of completion, you could say, in the 40 years since I saw my first snake, my fascination has only grown, but sadly so has the impact of snakebite. My mother's advice to never ever go near a snake is not a practical solution for many people, but solutions do exist, and the Snakebite Engagement Network is working to advocate for communities most affected. So in this middle part, you can really go to town on having your sort of key fact. And you can use your own story. You can use the story of someone you've met. You can use a a sort of evocative image from some work that you've done. Okay. Final structure I'm giving you is the listicle. I really like the listicle for when perhaps you don't have necessarily a sort of human interest story, but you still want to be able to convey a lot of information in a way that is digestible. So you will have seen listicles online. They were very popular a while ago, but I think they're still really powerful. So this would be the sort of article which has a headline like 7 things I learned at the Durban Snakebite Prevention Conference, 4 things the WHO could do right now to reduce the devastating impact of snakebite. I spent a day with farmers in rural India. Here are 3 things they want you to know about snakebite. The idea here is that this idea of the short list allows someone who's browsing to quickly assess how much time it's going to take them to read this article. They don't feel quite so overwhelmed by the possibility that it's going to be 3,000 words. They know roughly how long it's going to be by how many things are on the list. One of the things, my top tips for this, is that people who are looking for this kind of content are often looking for a slightly lighter type of content. So even if what you're saying has perhaps a negative slant, I would encourage you for a listicle to try and write it with a more positive outlook. So for example, if you want to write an article called 5 ways the global approach to anti-venom is putting the most vulnerable at risk, you could change that to 5 ways we could transform our approach to anti-venom and save lives. So moving to a more solutions-focused approach for the listicle, I think is always a good idea. Okay. Right. I apologize that this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, guys. So once you've chosen your structure, I just also want to reflect with you guys for a bit on style. The first one, which can seem very obvious, is about using accessible language. What I'd really encourage you to do is to imagine maybe like a high school student. A smart high school student has come to you and said, oh, I'm super interested in your work. I would like to become a herpetologist one day. I would like to become a community-based researcher one day. You're going to think about using that level of language. So that means instead of writing something like, this study considers SRH-related health-seeking behaviors, which is full of acronyms, who knows what SRH is, sort of jargon, health-seeking behaviors, that's confusing. We're going to strip out all of that and just say, we were interested in the choices women face when they need to access maternal health care or contraception. And in this example, I'd just like to point out that it's not, we could have just spelled out the acronym, so sexual reproductive health, but that's still quite jargon heavy. And so it's much more accessible to really explain what we mean. Oh, maternal health care or contraception. So we're looking to make sure that obviously, you know, not school kids, but like smart teenagers would be able to follow what you have to say. And that's a real process of unlearning a lot of the technical language that we use every day. My second tip would be using the active voice. So science writing trains us to never say we or I, but human beings relate most to other human beings. And so if you want your writing to feel relatable, to feel personal, to feel accessible, you need to put yourself back in the story. Instead of saying this intervention ran for 6 weeks, 300 households were reached, which is a real invisible man statement. Who ran it? We don't know. You say, we ran the project for 6 weeks and we managed to reach 300 households. You're really trying to put the person back into this narrative. Just like any good story has characters. And following on from that idea, it's really time, this is a real opportunity to sort of throw off that sort of very sort of impersonal approach to writing and share your thoughts, opinions, and hopes. If in your article, your scientific article, you wrote significant improvements were reported and a recommendation to extend the pilot program was made, again, very passive voice, but also very impersonal, you could change that to, We are excited about this project. Our participants tell us it's making a real difference in their lives. We've recommended that the pilot project be extended, so watch this space. Tone is conversational, it's human, and that's what we really encourage you to be in your writing. I've just got a couple more of these and then I'll soon be handing over. This one I think is really important. A lot of your research will take place in places which your readers might never have been to and might not be able to imagine. So while you might want to write 20 snakes were rescued, that doesn't really mean very much to someone who doesn't know the context. Instead, you could write something like, we were in a small village in South Sudan. It was incredibly hot and humid. We were shown to a tukul, a home made from local materials, including earthen bricks and straw. Inside, in the darkness, suddenly, I, as the reader, am trying to picture this place. Suddenly, I'm trying to picture the people who live there. Suddenly, I care a lot more about what you're trying to communicate with me. So I really encourage you to think about painting a picture with your words. And I think this is my last one. Break it up, guys. I'm not going to read you this example, but this is basically the same text on the left and the right of this slide. And you can see the text on the left has no subtitles and the text on the right has 3. And the key thing to know about this is much of your audience will be reading on a mobile phone. And this amount of text on a mobile phone is not a very nice reading experience. It's overwhelming. Your sort of eyes don't know where to look. You'd be much better off including meaningful subtitles, which will also improve the performance of your article when it comes to Google rankings, because Google will also be reading those subtitles to help it understand the content. So always include lots of nice subheadings. Okay, last stretch before I hand over. Beginnings and endings. People often tell me that this is the hardest part, and I totally get it. So what this is all about is how to get someone's attention. How are we going to grab their attention? They've got all this other stuff on the internet to look at. What are we going to do with it once we have their attention? Sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to look at the newspaper to get some inspiration for headlines. Headlines is you setting out your stall to your article. You're inviting someone to come in and read your article. And I would really encourage you not to look at newspaper articles, because newspapers very often will explain everything that the article is about in the headline. And so lots of people will just go to, for example, BBC News and just scroll the homepage, and they will, just by reading those headlines, feel like they've got a good understanding of what's going on in the world. That's not what we want. We want people who will click through. And so I love, if anyone here is a Firefox user, if you open a new tab on your Firefox browser, it will show you selected stories. And this is a fantastic source of inspiration for headlines, because all of these headlines will have been optimized to make them extremely clickable. So we can see some trends here already. Here we've got the listicle, 7 summer shoes from around the world. Here we've got a question, another listicle. Hang on, let me play. Another question. Something that feels like a tutorial, something that people could use in their own lives. Language which suggests a hidden history. That's really nice as well. This idea that there's something unknown that you'd have to click through to reach. An evocative quote here. All of these are great tools to help you build a good headline. This one is quite nice as well, because it takes something which people thought they knew and suggests that if you click through the article, you'll find that what you thought you knew was wrong. So, top tips: use a quote and follow it with some useful context. I've never seen anything like it. It's a game changer. Anything that suggests newness or innovation is always helpful for this. Use a question. Address the reader. Everything your kids should know about snakes. Everything you should know about the new policy changes on anti-venom. That's really nice because it sort of very directly calls the reader in. And then this idea of promising to reveal something unknown, what it's really like. Here's what insiders are saying. Here's how. So this sense that there is secret information contained inside your article, which will intrigue people enough to click through. So those are my tips on headlines. My final thing is calls to action, also known as CTAs. And I've put this last, but really, because it will probably come at the end of your article. But really, this is something you should be thinking about right at the start, even before you start writing. Who is the audience for this piece, and what do you want them to do? And that could be as simple as click here to find out more about the Snakebite Engagement Network. Maybe you want them to click through to your actual scientific paper. Having enjoyed this sort of article which summarizes it, maybe you want them to move through and find out more. But this idea of the call to action will give you maybe you want them to sign up to a newsletter. Whatever it is, it will help you know what you're trying to do with your article. Right. So I think that was me. That's just under half an hour. Any questions before I hand over to Laura, who's going to start taking you through some more concrete examples of how comms has been used on this issue already? Okay, Laura, I think it's over to you.
Good. I hope people can see me and hear me. Yeah, thanks very much, Amber. That, a really wonderful and solid introduction to the business of communicating, and more importantly, perhaps connecting with audiences. I do remember, I'm a former journalist myself, and I do remember hearing that the highest paid jobs in journalism were the people who wrote the headlines at various popular newspapers here in the United Kingdom. So, it really is a skill and an art that one has to hone. So thank you very much, Amber. And yes, there will be some overlap, obviously, with our stuff here. That's fine. Advocacy is repetition, we're always told, and communication. So, yeah, Matthew, have you got my slides ready? They're coming up. Anyway, yeah. So I'm Laura McCullough, and as I said before, I work on MSF Access Campaign Communications team. I don't know if you need to see me or not. Are you seeing me or not seeing me? Anyway, I'll leave it on for now. We'll see how we go. One of the many things I do is that I'm kind of the editor of the Access Campaign blog. So we have an Access Campaign blog up on the Medium platform, which some of you may know about. And I have to say, blogs are one of our several advocacy and public communications tools. There's quite a range. But I have to say, it is the one I like working on most. And I think, we've heard a lot about, the skills of writing it. For me, it's a very much freer place than many of the other public communication tools that we use. The press release, obviously we have policy documents and reports and so on. So I think it's a much freer place where you can allow people to express a bit about themselves as well as about their work, and, express what's human and make those connections in the kind of way that you often don't get in many sort of more formal communication tools. So here's what I think the blog brings to us. I mean, I have many tasks. So, I think there's so many more things I could do with our blog, but these are the reasons I really like working on it. I think it's a place where we can bring multiple voices and we can bring a lot of perspectives on our work, which is, as you know, dedicated to ensuring equitable access to medicines. So on our blog, you'll find contributions from Access Campaign team members, and that's very interdisciplinary. So you get all sorts of different voices there. We have voices from patients. We have voices from field staff. We have voices from people working in the space, but not actually in MSF. And we have voices of student activists and things like that. So I love this kind of huge variety of different voices that are in the space, and they're all united by this kind of one impulse and vision of equitable access. The other thing I think a blog can do that, again, the other tools can fall short of, is put a piece of work in context. And they can tell the longer story, they can connect the dots. And an example I'll give is we recently did a blog about access to a TB drug called bedaquiline. So there'll be many, many steps on this journey. We first started getting interested, I think, well over a decade ago in MSF. And there've been various twos and fros, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, etc., etc. But it wasn't until we put it all together that we realized, I mean, this is really quite an exceptional story of activism and access. And it was very much appreciated by people. So being able to connect the dots and tell the longer story than a press release or even a short article or update on a website, I think is critical to the way the blog functions. Freer format, I've said that, or we've heard from Amber already about some interesting ways to structure the content itself. There's room to experiment. There's room to find what you're comfortable with and what, well, both the editor and the people who are writing. So I think that's something we would really encourage you to experiment with. And multiple audiences. I mean, generally, the audiences are much wider. They're not technical. They're not niche, as we've heard. The blog acts, if you like, as a gateway. So it welcomes people in. And then, if there are people who come to your blog and they say, well, hang on, I want a bit more data than this or whatever, you'll be able to offer hyperlinks, or, you can usher people on to, other reports and things like that. Sorry, banging here. So, yeah, I like that. And it's also very, very versatile in the way that it's used and distributed. So our blogs have been used by press teams to pitch as op-eds. They weren't created as such, but people have taken them because they're strong and they're powerful and pitched them to their local media. In other places, we have advocates who actually just print out the blog and take it to their ministries. So, there are a lot of different ways in which blogs can be used. Again, I love the very versatility of this form. Anyway, the key thing, I think, in all of this that attracts me particularly is this building of community, this building of the access to medicine community, bringing different voices together, sharing one essential vision. So it's not just sort of snap bang wallop, PR, get your quote in the, whatever it is, New York Times. It is an incremental way of developing, an advocacy work and shared community together. So that's why I'm really excited about this workshop and the work of the SEN and how blogs could help you, in that work. Great. Next one, please. So how's it going to help you in the SEN? Again, some of the things I've just talked about. It will, I hope, build community. It will build your confidence as a community to speak. It will be empowering that you realize, you belong to a group of people and make each other visible. That's obviously a very sort of powerful effect of sharing a tool like this. You'll be able to present the reality on the ground. I know I've often heard that, the reality on the ground is not reflected. It's not getting to the capital cities. It's not really being taken into account. So this is a place where you can get it down in black and white, the realities that you are facing every day. And with that, the complexity and diversity. I mean, it is wonderful, the different kind of activities you're all involved in, and yet it's all, coming together for the one kind of vision. So that can be reflected in a blog, given its very versatile format. You can share challenges and solutions with peers. Knowledge sharing, of course, this is an excellent place to do that. And you can elevate the local to wider audiences. You with this blog can gain attention, potentially resources and support at national and international level. I mean, the internet knows no bounds. So you get your blog up on a platform, it can travel. So those are just some of the ways where, I congratulate you on your choice of trying to come together and, start creating and writing about your community. Next one, please. I'm sorry mine haven't got so many lovely pictures as Amber. She's very, very good at that, and mine a bit lacking, but here's a lovely picture on this one anyway. I don't know if any of you have the link to this. I picked this, it's a blog, it's from our Medium blog, not about snakebite, but it's always been one that I think is a really good example of, you know, how you can start getting people from quite wide audiences into fairly complex topics. So this article is actually about the United Kingdom Labour Party's policies on medicine prices and R&D. So it's actually about a fairly complicated policy paper, which was, I think, called Medicines for the Many, a few years back now. And this is written by one of our own advocacy people. And I think right off, I don't know if you're able to skim while you're looking at it, or maybe Matthew could also just drop the link for later. I mean, obviously you have the slides. What I really like is right off at the beginning, the author starts by getting us on his side by talking about his own feelings of the work that he's doing. He actually calls out the technical jargon and said, no, okay, we talk about these things, incentives, fair return on investment, blah, blah, all the kind of buzzwords that go with his territory. And he says, well, actually, there is that. But, you know, sometimes it is a human story that reminds us why we're all here and why we're doing this work. Now, I find this very moving, I have to say, this kind of way that he said, yes, you know, I'm an expert, but I'm putting that to one side and I'm getting down to the human story. And the human story is this charming photo of a young chap called Lewis. I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but yeah, he was priced out of treatment and for his illness. And I think he's actually holding a letter to the company, which he wrote to ask them to lower prices. So I think, sorry, I haven't quite finished that one. I think the most successful blogs are ones that reflect or include something of the personality of the author. So not just a description of the work, but why it's important to them. Why do they do it? Why do they think other people should care? But I'm always asking straight off, can you bring and anchor your blog with a personal experience? You know, this is the best entryway to a piece of writing that I know. Okay, can we shift over to the next one? Thanks. So practical tips. Well, you know, again, this is probably slightly overlapping with Amber's and not so beautifully featured, but here you go. So obviously with the audiences, when you're writing a blog, you've kind of decided on this format already, and with that territory comes, you know, the wider audiences and the commitment you need to make to non-technical language and the kind of tone that you'll use. The blog format is not a policy document. It's a gateway piece, it's a teaser. So that, as we've said, is a key thing to kind of bear in mind. Now, the length of blogs, it might sound a bit random, but I kind of think that 4 minutes is what I'm prepared to do on a phone, on a commute, on a whatever, with something that isn't, you know, an 80-page document I have to get through. And 4 minutes is about 1,000 words. So I would think that is sort of quite manageable. That's the guide I give our authors. We you know, we sin quite a lot, as it were, and we have a lot longer pieces as well. But hey, it's a blog, we can be flexible. But I think try and consider that, keep that in mind. 4 minutes, is that what we, you know, people, to get an entrance, a gateway to this topic that they might then want to follow up on later. Obviously, when you're structuring it, you're going to want to make a plan before you start. And Amber's given you lots of sort of ideas here about different ways you might want to structure the piece itself. And she mentioned another format that I use a lot, actually. And I kind of started using it because it just made things easier, which, you know, when I have a lot of stuff to get through. And that is a kind of Q&A, you know, doing an interview. So somebody interviews you about your work, and, you know, you can agree on the questions before, and you can, you know, after the interview is done, it's transcribed. You can go through it, pick out the interesting bits. That would be more an editorial thing, and then share it and make sure that you know, you both agree that this is the best that it could be. It does save a lot of time sometimes if you, you know, are hard pressed. And it's also quite useful in ways of sort of moving between a lot of different topics quite quickly. You've got a fresh question and you can change direction in your narrative. Whereas if you're writing a sort of a flowing narrative by itself, sometimes it's quite difficult to turn those corners between different topics. So obviously you're going to go for the punchy title. Thank you, Amber, again. Yes, questions or a great quote, or yeah, just something that's going to be sort of fairly arresting. I find questions work very well, actually. Then you'll want the introduction. You need to introduce who's writing and why. But introductions can vary a lot. I mean, some of them are just one-liners and you jump straight in, and some of them, when you might need to add quite a bit more context before you get into the piece proper. Again, I'm not, there's no rule of thumb, and you'll just kind of work out what works in each case. So the opening paragraph, yes, this opening line is so important. You need something that is going to grab people by the throat. So, a statement that engages your audience and gets the attention right away. Could be a dramatic fact, or, it could be a very arresting quote. And we're going to look at a couple of blogs a bit later on. So, we can have a look there at what I mean by that. But I'm sure you've probably got a pretty good idea anyway. In the rest of the piece, I would really generally cover, 3 to 5 points only. This is not comprehensive. Otherwise, it will be another kind of document. It's like a taster all the way through. So I would pick out, they don't even have to be necessarily the 3 things that all connect or whatever, but pick out, 3 to 5 points that you can make the case and support them, and they're quite punchy. Obviously, then, at the end, you'll be sending people off to the main document or the main publication in many cases. So, you don't need to be worried that you're leaving stuff out, is what I'm saying. And then, of course, the clear CTA, as we've heard. You always want this, and particularly for you as an advocacy community, just be very clear who needs to act and what they need to do. And that's the message that people literally take away with them at the end. Generally, just as a writer, again, variety. Keep your paragraphs short. I mean, when I look at something and the paragraph is half a page, my heart sinks. We do need short paragraphs, possibly using subtitles to sort of take the reader by the hand and guide them through the structure is also useful if you've got time to kind of do that. You can use quotes. You can pull quotes out of the main body and highlight them in your piece of text. And by quotes, I mean just something that you've said. It doesn't have to be something someone else has said in the piece, but just a bold statement that you think stands out. Bring it in. Break up the text. I think this is what Amber was saying before. Cool. Okay, so let's go on to and of course a fantastic way of enlivening and bringing interest and breaking up the text and doing all those important things of photos. They really can lift a piece up. They can add variety and interest. In the early days, sometimes one had to be a bit limited about it because of the bandwidth and stuff like that people might not load or open. So I don't know, depends what's happening where you are. But if you can, strongly suggest using photos to break up the text is one important thing. The other things that photos can do, please, put a face on the voice. The more we know about someone, what we hear, what we see, the more it will stick with us. It'll be sticky. So please try and always include a photo of the author. I used to try to avoid institutional photos, people with the MSF logo behind, and try and get people in more sort of informal settings. Not always possible. But just, we're talking people all the time, people as authors, people as readers. Photos are brilliant at communicating context very quickly. You can see from a photo, is it rural? Is it an urban environment? Is it forested? Is it remote? What's the infrastructure like? Just literally in a snapshot, you can convey a lot, so you don't have to kind of spell that out. The human element we've talked about, literally putting a human face to a problem or to a solution. People do remember them better rather than, just the abstract statement. Put a face on your challenge and possibly on your solution. Now, there are issues around using photos. It's not just a free-for-all. And certainly in MSF, we've had a lot of thinking about this, evolving thinking. The people who you use in your photos have to be informed. They have to know how and where their image is going to go. And we have quite a in-depth process now of making sure that it's what's called informed consent, so people understand. I can remember interviewing someone some years ago, and he said it's fine so long as these pictures don't go outside Mumbai. And I was saying, I just can't guarantee that. Obviously today things have moved on a bit and people would understand that we're in a global world, but people do need to be made to understand the implications of having a picture of them and maybe their children. I mean, some people just won't let that happen anyway, but just so you know. And we always in MSF, we've sinned in the past, as it were, but the dignity and the agency of patients is something that we want to show. We don't like to show distressing images of injuries or wounds, and particularly in snakebite, there's a lot of really horrible stuff out there, but we don't want to show physically upsetting images either for the audiences or for the dignity of the patients themselves. So we steer clear of those completely. And we also don't particularly want to show people in passive mode so that we know it's completely collapsed. We want to be able to share some agency and some hope. So that's just something a bit around photos. They're also brilliant as sort of just mini stories, mini human stories or case studies. You just have a picture of a person and then a little story of what happened to them and how it all ended. And that it's very vivid, like a little sort of jewel in the middle of a piece. And it's also quite a good place to dump facts and figures, frankly. If you had a picture of, say, an MSF, clinic or whatever, you can then use the caption to write, well, MSF works in X countries and treats X number of people or whatever. You've done your job there. You've got the information in there, but it hasn't it isn't there to kind of weigh down the narrative. So just overall photos, part of this increasing the variety of people's experience, keeping the narrative alive and jumping with a lot of changing elements, the visuals, the story itself, quotes that you can use, hyperlinks, pull quotes. Those were the things I mentioned when you can, just take them out of the body of the text and present them in the middle of your prose. Okay, so that's kind of me done. Now I'm going to look with you at quickly at 3 blogs that are on snakebite that are on our Medium blog. So the first one, Matthew, I don't know if you can share the actual blog. I hope people have had a chance to look. It's quite difficult to talk you through. It's the first one is why rapid treatment is essential after a snakebite story. I don't know if you're on, you might want to just not look at my thing, but get that up yourselves.
Yes,
the
sure.
blog article, sorry, Matthew.
Go ahead, Irani.
I have shared all the articles in the chat, so you can have a
Lovely.
look and click on that.
Thank you. Yeah. So there we are. Yeah. The medicines for the many one I said at the beginning, that's right down at the bottom. So that's not a snakebite one. The top one, yeah. So this is a blog from Dr. Mark McNichol, an MSF staffer. He was working in South Sudan, and this was written to be posted on International Snakebite Awareness Day in 2022. It's a very nice, neat 4 minutes read. So, this piece, if you're all able to look at it, it's a very powerful first-person description of what they're seeing on the ground, and then linking that to an advocacy call. So what we were saying is, you kind of personalize the advocacy, and this is exactly what he was doing. So there's a very simple title, says what it's going to do on the tin, not pulling any stunts there. The author begins with a very engaging first statement. What he's doing is, he's a doctor, of course, but he starts by asking the audience to put themselves directly in the place of someone bitten by a snake, and it pulls you in immediately. If you get bitten by a snake in rural South Sudan, you're there, So that's obviously a very good technique. Then he seems to take you through what seems like a straightforward list of 3 things that can happen, which again is sort of deceptively simple. This happens and this or this happens. The simplicity is very easy to read, but you're made acutely aware of how those 3 simple options, that a doctor might list out, has an incredibly credible impact on someone bitten by a snake. So I think he's just he's a good writer, and I suspect Amber edited him. But anyway, he's brought you into the story. He's put you into the shoes of the person we're talking about, and he's kind of led you in a clever way through the awful, 3 options from hell that you face if this happens to you. So after that, we've got a nice photo that sets the context and the environment. It's a small town, actually, apparently. Is it Lankian? I can't remember. But, there's still a Takul there, so that speaks to the fairly rural setting. I actually had a request to pull this photo at one point, because if you look at it, Dr. Mark is wearing sandals, which really is a no-no. Everything they're training about is not going around barefooted or in sandals. But anyway, you get a sense of place and the kind of, where we're operating. Then after that, we've been given a sense of place. There's a change of direction. No, we're still on the first blog. As Mark moves to much more factual content about MSF's work in that area. So after the photo, it says the MSF hospital is in the small town of Lankian in Jonglei State, blah, blah, blah. So, a lot of what you get is zooming in and pulling out again, and that's part of the interest. But it is quite cinematic sometimes, the way in which people can write. So he's got some factual content in, and now he brings in the one woman specific story. And there's no facts and figures in this bit. It's a narrative, and into that narrative he weaves his highly technical medical knowledge, but it is in and through the story of this person and what happens when a snake gets you. So you're getting informed all the time, which is important, but you're also getting engaged, and you want to know what's going to happen. And he keeps it very human. He talks about the terrible smell of the infection. So this is not a sort of medical account, as it were. This is a different kind of description of what he is encountering. And the language throughout is so simple, so unmedical, but very informative. And I've worked with doctors for many years now, and I still occasionally am completely blindsided by the language. So I'm always very impressed when a doctor is able to put that aside and kind of talk and work in a different language almost. So if we go on to the next bit, not the next slide, sorry, there is this ghastly picture of a dead snake. Now, I don't know how this is going to affect people here. It's pretty grim for anyone, and particularly people who love snakes. I imagine this is not much fun at all, and might be something you consider you don't want to show. But I have to tell you, it has been one of the most successful assets, as we call these things, that we've ever used on Snakebite. We've made videos, we made graphics, we've made infographics, we've done whatever. Whenever this photo appears, people like it and get engaged or whatever. So it's a bit of a mystery to us in our team. But anyway, just the power of photo for good or for bad. So then Mark goes on to set out the medical and humanitarian dilemma. And I think it's great he talks about the doubts. This for us as writers, the doubts. And where's the dilemma? What's going to happen next? On a human level, again, I think that's a very appealing way of writing a story. I could have done this, I could have done that. Oh, I was a bit torn between the two. But again, the patient story is being woven in at this point still. Then he zooms out of the shot, as it were, to the bigger picture, to MSF's wider work and a call to action for change. And the call to action here is for access to effective anti-venom, increased investment in community awareness, first aid, and preventing snakebite. So big picture stuff. But the piece then closes with a patient who is now directly linked to the urgent call for change. And then we're offered a further link for more information, which you always need to offer people. So I just think that's a wonderful piece. And I think I discern Amber's hand in there somewhere. Yeah, so that's one thing that we have, the first person on our blog. Are there any questions about that before I move on to the next blog? I know that I'm slightly overshoot. I think I'll just do one more because we haven't got a lot of time, to be honest. Okay, so the next one is example blog is promoting an academic paper. If we could go on, Mathieu, sorry, I haven't timed myself properly, obviously. Yeah, so please take a moment to skim through. It's the second link there. This is written by Julien Portet, who's on this call. He's our technical expert. and the NCD advisor to the Access campaign. It's great. It's short and sharp. It's 3 minutes long. It's such a relief. And the occasion was International Neglected Tropical Diseases Day. These World Days, they're great. People say, oh, why should we do it? Everyone's talking about it. Yes, that's the point. This is a moment when you want to get your voices out. So seize on any kind of, public day, world day, whatever it is, any opportunity to be part of the conversation when other people are discussing things. So this is a piece that promotes a publication in a journal. So it summarizes and it promotes the much more technical and detailed content. And it also offers people links to the full analysis. It is truly a gateway piece. So we have a nice, short and snappy title and an engaging first sentence. Some diseases are more neglected than others. Short and to the point, and you get a sense of the author, I think, a bit behind that as well. Now, the structure, the full article appears in this journal, Toxicon. So he's not going to write about the whole thing because he's done that already. But what he's going to do is he's going to pull out 3 key items. Now, Amber didn't mention it, but there's a thing about the magic of 3. Somehow it seems to be easy for people to remember and latch on to. 5 is a bit much. Maybe in a listicle it's okay, but certainly 3 is a very sort of good number, it seems, to be able to pin out your arguments. So he focuses on 3 elements: access to effective anti-venom, MSF services for people with snakebite, their successful model of care, and the training. But it's not, he didn't write about them at length, but he just touches on them. So I think that's very successful, and anyone who wants to know more can push off and read the full thing. A quick word about the photos. I love this again. This is a picture of Julien giving blood. So he's actually participating in trainings on the ground. It's not a very lovely photo by, composition or whatever. It's not going to win any prizes. It's very authentic. And you see the author walking the talk. And so that's a very good sort of connection, I think, to be able to do. So do take pictures of yourselves or get people to take pictures of you when you're out and about doing your work. They will be very useful for you. And the other photo is a little case study. It's a little girl from Kenya who's injured. Notice, we're not showing horrible things, but, she's got a story and she's come through. And it's all just told in the caption, which is a very neat way to capture that. And at the end of the piece, we move to the conclusion. And this moves from the ground reality, which we have, been hearing about, to a call to action at the international policy level where things need to change. And it specifically references the WHO roadmap on NTDs. Now, I realize we're about to run out of time, so I'm not going to go through the 3rd blog, which actually is the jewel in the crown, because this was Hiral's blog, but I do suggest you look at it. It's a 10-minute read because there was a lot of content and perspectives, and I thought that's fine. It's worth it because this is the kind of foundation stone for the whole of the SEND stuff that you're doing. And it was done in this Q&A way so that we could jump around from topic to topic and taking the audience with us. And yeah, so I'm afraid I'm not going to take it through, but obviously great picture of Hiral, great picture of the snake. And sorry, excuse me. I really urge you to read that to get inspiration, because she really laid out, this is what we are, this is why we're here, this is what we need to happen. A great call to action at the end, literally recruiting people to the SEN. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for now. Polls. I think we now we will go on to Julia, who is an absolute expert in using social media to communicate about science. Julia.
Well, thank you very much, Laura, and Amber for the introductions and the presentations. My own presentation will be much about a slightly different topic. It's about using social networks, and particularly Twitter, now known as X, to communicate and to about snakebite and to advocate for policy change on snakebite. Just before I start, it will be a very short presentation. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go. So you probably know Twitter and X, and just a short caveat before we start is that X now, the social network in 2024 is now called X, and it's quite different from Twitter from a few years ago. It's much less exciting, I would say. Now premium accounts are given much more visibility, so you need to pay on Twitter to get visibility for your tweets. It's a very political network now with a lot of partisanship. There is very limited space for apolitical messaging and advocacy, and there's a lot of toxic accounts as well. And now even some in your timeline on Twitter, I don't know if people are familiar with Twitter, but on your timeline now, what is visible is not necessarily what the people you follow are tweeting. What is most visible is what Twitter, as a company, as a corporation, suggests to its members. So it's not as interactive as it's used in the past, but you can still easily interact directly with experts, with policymakers. So that's the beauty of Twitter, and it's still valid to some extent, is that it facilitates direct interactions with people you don't even know actually, but who share some interests with you. So some of the tips about using Twitter for Snakebite. So on Twitter, people use a lot of hashtags, and the two different hashtags that are used in the case of Snakebite is Snakebite and Snakebites with an S. Both of them are used. They're not used very much, but still, if you use them, you can find quite some interesting posts and messages. And I think it's also important to use other hashtags in order to broaden your audience. You don't want to speak only to people who are very familiar with Snakebite. You may want to speak with people who know a little bit but are interested in related topics like neglected tropical diseases, for example, or One Health. So you may want to use Beat NTDs or One Health as hashtags in order to reach people who are more familiar with these different hashtags. My recommendation is to develop threads. A thread is a list, is a series of tweets. You can develop threads if the subject matter is too complex for just a couple of tweets. I really enjoy reading threads, and sometimes on very complicated topics on Twitter. So basically, it's a series of concise tweets that are sequential, but at the end of the day, it may contain up to 20 or 25 tweets that are related to each other in a thread, and very complicated matters can be expressed. I also recommend inserting screenshots, and if you publish data, to link and to refer to the original source of the data that you mention. And please, 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 if you're on Twitter, retweet your colleagues, retweet people that publish good posting on Snakebite. You may not fully endorse what this other person has written. You may disagree a little bit as well. But still, I think it's important to retweet people who speak and raise the profile of Snakebite on Twitter, because this is how the visibility will increase. Good thing about Twitter, as I said, is that you can you can discuss with people who reply to your post, and I encourage you all to do that. It's a great tool to create a community. And a good thing as well is you can easily tag people in your tweets, in your posts. You can tag them if they have an X account or a Twitter account. So you may want to tag your primary targets of the message. So they will, in that case, very probably see the message that you have posted, even though they may not be followers of your own account. And on Twitter, of course, people like and love to use emojis and memes. I don't do it myself so much, memes, but I know that it's great to use memes and emojis to reach a broader audience and to and basically to have fun, because Twitter and X is a lot about having fun as well. Huh? So finally, speak with your own voice on Twitter. You may want to post messages that really are yourself. not necessarily, it's not about corporate communication, it's about your own personal communication. So of course you belong to an institution, you are affiliated with a group, but on Twitter I usually speak myself, and it's very important to speak with your own voice and your own style. It's better to reach a broader audience. And finally, please be gentle. This network is polluted with a lot of toxic accounts, so unfortunately, so it's very important to always remain gentle, I think. So just a few examples. This one, I recently tweeted, it didn't work very well, this one, about the fact that another organization called Uniting to Combat NTDs communicated recently about the fact that they would want to mobilize resources for neglected tropical diseases. So that's a good thing, but they made it clear that they would not mobilize resources for snakebite, which I think is a bit problematic. So in this example, I tagged this group Uniting to Combat NTDs with their Twitter account. I use the link to refer to the original document as a source, and I also use a screenshot for the viewer to immediately see what we're talking about. Another example, speaking about the antivenom crisis in South Africa, basically the same thing. I used screenshots, and people, when they click on it, they can see the text very well, and also reference, of course, the source. And I used another hashtag BeatNTDs, which is very well known among the NTD community. So people who are not so much into snakebite, but they're interested into other NTDs, they use this hashtag a lot. This is very important to retweet others, and in this case, I retweeted a post by our colleagues from She India. I think Priyanka is in the call right now, in order to amplify a little bit her message. It was a message about the potential use of ventilators following the COVID pandemic for the benefit of snakebite victims, because ventilators, as you know, are very helpful against snakebite as well, or snakebite envenoming. So that just to it's sometimes very effective to link snakebite to another topic that has much more visibility, like COVID-19. So I think it's a good way to attract into snakebite some people who are not very familiar with the topic yet. And once again, let's retweet each other. I retweet quite often She India and a lot of other community-based organizations working on snakebite. And finally, this is my last slide. I also use Twitter to communicate publicly about some publications in peer-reviewed journals. So this is in this example, it was a publication about MSF programs against snakebite that was published in Toxicon, a peer-reviewed journal for toxicology and snakebite. Because the topic was relatively complex with a lot of different things, I decided to develop a full thread on it. These are just a few of the posts in the thread. There are many more than that, but you can see that throughout a thread, if you use screenshots, if you refer to different sections of the paper, you can develop quite a complicated argumentation. So I use it a lot, not only on snakebite but other topics. Many scientists now communicate on Twitter to simplify a little bit the purpose of their papers. So it's a very good tool for science communication and in a lay language. So this is just one of the few examples that I've done, but it's I think a very effective tool to once again speak about science to an audience that is not necessarily made of scientists. So these are just my tips to use Twitter, and of course I hope that we can retweet each other in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Julien. I will now. I don't know if anyone has questions for any of the panelists. If not, I'm going to invite you. I'm going to invite you in different rooms, and you'll be sent to different rooms. Yes, Laura. Sorry.
Sorry, I probably need to explain what they're going to do in those rooms. Shall I? With
Sure.
Slide 9.
Sorry.
Slide 9. Yeah, I'm really sorry. We are a bit kind of late on all of this, so I'm hoping we can at least get people to make a start on this. So yeah, the workshop, and yeah, Mathieu is very kindly going to usher people off. So we want to try and see what we can do in a workshop mode now. So groups of 2, 20 minutes. Probably less now, that you work together and you interview each other on each other's work, or obviously you're just going to pick one at this point, either about a piece of work or just more generally about your work. Write down the audience and why you want to connect with them, write a title, write an opening paragraph, list out 3 to 5 bullets to develop in the main body, and come up with a final CTA. All that very rapidly, but yeah, I think this will be a useful exercise to get going on. Sorry, that's the final thing. So yeah, is that clear enough? I don't know. Can we leave this slide for people to look at, or can they be put somewhere where people can access it, Mathieu?
I will copy it. But just before, we have several people who have left, so I'm going to send you to rooms, but unfortunately it's a bit random. So I will make sure that there is enough people in each room. I'm sorry, Yusuf, I don't seem to be able to send you to a room, so you'll probably stay in the main bits with Julien and Amber. So Julien, if I can ask you to maybe play as a participant, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So let me send you to the room now. And you should be moved.